So I'm really happy to take part in this event, and it's a great possibility just to think about connection of Russian culture, Irish culture, and in general, I'd like to save time, but I really wanted to read one poem, Zinaida Hippius poem. I'm sure that a lot of people know this poem, but I see that there are a lot of students, so maybe for the students it will be useful to hear it, but in Russian, okay? О, Ирландия, океанная, мной невиданная страна, почему ее зыбь туманная в ясность здешнего вплетена? Я не думал о ней, не думаю, я не знаю ее, не знал, почему так режут тоску мою лезвие ее острых скал? Как я помню зори надпенные, в черной алости чаек стон, или памятью мира пленную прохожу я сквозь ткань времен. О, Ирландия неизвестная, о, Россия, моя страна, не единая ли мука крестная всей Господней земле дана? And I think it's a good start for the conversation about Russia, about Ireland, and for me, it's a little bit complicated to talk about Russia and Ireland because I'm specialized in Russian literature, but in Dostoevsky. And for Dostoevsky, Ireland is not Irish literature or culture is not so important as for example, French literature, German literature, but for Russian culture of this first part, for Russian literature of the first part of 18th century, Irish literature is very important. And for me, once I was really surprised that a famous Russian song, Вечерний звон, is not Russian song. It's a translation. It's a translation of a poem of Thomas More, Those Evening Bells. Those evening bells, how many tales their music tells. And Russian Вечерний звон, как много дум наводит тон. And so Russian literature, or Irish literature is so important for Russian literature of the first part of the 19th century. But at the same time, I thought about modern Russian culture, modern Russian literature, and for mass culture, pop culture, for example, a famous Russian band, folk band, Melnitsa, based their songs, their poems on Yeats, and on Irish literature in general. So it's very interesting how nowadays Irish culture is become more and more important. So, and today we will talk about it, and I will think about special type of culture in Russian and in Ireland, because as I see in Russia and in Ireland, literature plays a very special role, and it's it's in a center of culture, and it is the foundation of national self-identity, and through the literature, a Russian man or an Irish man understands its own identity, national identity. So it's closely connected with literature. And for us, Russia is Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, yeah, as Yeats and Joyce are in Ireland. And sure, in the same time, it's a great specific of Irish literature. I think in a different ways, it's similar to Russian literature, because Russian literature anyway is in a shadow of great authors of Russian literature. It's about Leo Tolstoy, it's about Dostoevsky, and Irish literature is in a shadow, in a shade of Joyce. Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting way to compare two types of culture. And also Russian literature and and Irish literature is not just a literature. I do remember, поэт в России больше, чем поэт. A poet in Russia is more than just a poet. And the same thing is in Ireland. For example, in Seamus Heaney's Nobel speech, he not just talk about poetry, but he talks about dramatic history of Ireland in the previous century, about so-called Blood Sunday, about killing people, and it's very similar way. And I think that it's not just an occasion, not just a word. When Seamus Heaney mentioned twice in his speech Mandelstam and once Akhmatova, because it's a connection on the level of history. And sure, it's the influence of Irish literature in Russia is quite important of the first part, and Alexeyev wrote a great work about it, but usually sometimes, we don't divide English literature and Irish literature, because, for example, Thomas More, usually we call him English, but actually no. And I'm really, and later for Yeats, it's a really great connection between Bloch, Alexander Bloch's poetry and Yeats' poetry, and in general poetry of Silver Age, like Mandelstam, Akhmatova, and it's connections in poetry. But at the same time, in modern Irish poetry, I was really surprised to know that, for example, modern poet Leland Bardwell wrote a big poem called Dostoevsky's Grave 30 years ago, and he wrote, for example, I am locked in this acropolis, just Fyodor and me. I rub my fingers in his overcoat of stone. And also, for example, poet Desmond O'Grady wrote a big article, Dostoevsky Lives. And for me, it's very interesting why. It's Russian literature is so important for Ireland, and maybe I read an article, and one of the persons wrote that yes, it's very easy to apply to personality of Dostoevsky or Tolstoy when you are talking about suffering. Yeah, because for a poet, it's very important to suffer, and Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Russian literature in general is famous for its suffering. Okay, maybe. And Dostoevsky is a great figure, yeah, a great sufferer, and here maybe there is an answer for question why. Why in Dublin there is a Bloomsday, yeah, and you tell Tatьяna Олеговна later about it, and why it is Dostoevsky Day in St. Petersburg. Yeah, two figures of great author, and I just want, as I know, yeah, you will tell about Bloomsday, yeah, not, but I just wanted to show a short video of Dostoevsky Day in St. Petersburg, yeah, just to show how important is literature in modern city, in modern culture, in modern outdoors culture, what is not closed in the walls of the museum. So yeah, I'll show you the video, just a part of it, and so yeah, as you see, I think that in Russia, yeah, I wanted to show that in Russia, literature is more than just a literature. It's a foundation, it's a base for a whole culture. And I think that in Ireland, the situation is really similar. Yeah. So, and so it is my part of the section, and yeah, if I'm really happy to introduce Tatьяna Олеговna, the head of the Center of Research of Russian. How it's better to translate? Center of Russian Foreigner. Yeah.
Russian, that's a long one. Yes, Vladimir Nabokov, Russian Heritage Center. That would be, I think, the translation. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for showing us a video of the Dostoevsky Day. It was really impressive. And
no, it's just a part. Yeah, there are a lot of videos. It's 10 years of celebration. Yeah, but it's just 10 years to compare with Bloomsday.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, because Bloomsday has a much longer history, but of course Bloomsday has never been so big. We never went out into the street. Well, this is of course logical, because Dostoevsky is a St. Petersburg writer. He's one of the symbols of St. Petersburg for the entire world, I think. And actually, a lot of people get interested in Petersburg because they read Dostoevsky. And Dostoevsky, he generates the interest in the city, in the history of Petersburg, and the culture of St. Petersburg. While Bloomsday is festival was and is a festival of the great Irish writer. I know this cultural connection between Ireland and Russia, because during all these years, and it's been quite a long time, because the first Bloomsday in the Vladimir Nabokov Museum was held in 1999. So that's in the last century, actually in the last millennium even. And so my field is Vladimir Nabokov, and I was working in the Vladimir Nabokov Museum for 18 years until 2019, when the museum was reformatted by the university management, and Nabokov scholars no longer work there. So I now work at Gercena University and the Russian Literature Institute. And but during all these years, we had annual festivals, which started as a festival, more a real festival with exhibitions by works by Irish artists, literary readings, music. We even had music. We had performers. Then with years, it was a broader event, which also included a conference. So beginning with 2003, we had annual Bloomsday conferences. Everything was done with support by the Irish Embassy in the Russian Federation. So this is very important. And in the last years, the festival was gradually transferred to another location, found another home, and this makes me very happy. It's now part of the Irish events of the Ghercena University, of the Irish Cultural Center of the Ghercena University. So most of us who were part of the Nabokov Museum festivals are now part of the Ghercena University festivals. Why Nabokov? What is the connection between Nabokov and Irish literature, Nabokov and Joyce? Vladimir Nabokov never traveled to Ireland. He spent a few years in England, as most of you know, but he never traveled to Ireland specifically. But there is a very strong connection between him and James Joyce, not only because they both were greatest writers of their time, as I think, two great modernist writers of the 20th century, which created new languages, while Nabokov created a new Russian literary language, makes him unique, makes him very distinct from other writers of his time and of the earlier times. In the same way, James Joyce created another language. You can always tell, just reading one phrase, you can always tell this is Joyce, this is not somebody else. And that was his one of his great achievements too. So they were on the same, they were level, they were on the same, their position in their respective literatures was the same. But also there was a personal connection, which is not as known as well as their cultural significance. They met a few times, they knew each other, they weren't really friends, but they met in the 1930s when both were living in Paris. They both were exiles, even though their exile was quite different, of course. For James Joyce, it was a matter of choice. He chose to be in exile because he preferred to live in a more tolerant European continental culture, French culture, French and Italian culture. And that's where he spent most of his of the years when he was writing his greatest works. While Nabokov was living in Paris and before that in Germany as a refugee, as one of the millions of Russian refugees who were forced to leave Russia after the revolution in 1917, after the Civil War. It wasn't their choice, of course, it was forced immigration. They never planned to be immigrants. They hoped to go back to Russia, but as we know, this never happened. And they were refugees in the modern sense of the word. They fled death, they emigrated for survival, not because they wanted to live in another culture, but even though they were so different in the source of their emigration, of course, their position of living within a different culture was comparable. And they were, of course, they were of a different age. Joyce was much older, and Joyce was also an accomplished, a famous writer by the time Nabokov was entering literature. And we know very well, Nabokov writes about it in his memoir of his first reading of Ulysses, which was then still banned in England, where a friend smuggled it and gave it to Nabokov, who was then a student, a Cambridge student, to read. And that was his first great impression. And then he read everything that was published by Joyce. He was a great admirer of Joyce. And when he came to live in Paris in 1930, well, he settled there in 1937 and spent 3 years in Paris. And they had friends, they had mutual friends. A very close friend of Joyce, who was Russian. His name was Paul Leon. That's the name that he he preferred, and that was the name that Joyce used when he addressed him, and also that's how he's called in the biographies of James Joyce. Paul Leon was, his real name was Pavel Leopoldovich Leon. He was Russian. He came from Petersburg, and his wife was Russian too, and they both lived in Paris. Both spoke English very well, of course, like most Russians, and like most Russian refugees at those times. And they met through a friend, and through a relative and a friend, and became very close friends. And sometimes Paul only described as Joyce's secretary. Actually, he acted as a secretary, even though he was not a paid secretary. He never received any salary from James Joyce. He helped him in many ways, but only out of his admiration for him as a writer. Paul Leon just wanted to help as much as he could, help Joyce go on with his writing. So he took responsibility for many of the things that Joyce was not very good at. Like, for example, dealing with lawyers, sometimes dealing with publishers, copyright issues. So everything that Joyce had to think about and write about, but had no time for, because at that time Joyce was working on his great final masterpiece, Finnegan's Wake, which was then called Work in Progress. And during all these years, they were very close. They met almost daily. And they went for long walks in Paris, and they talked, and Joyce visited Paul Leon and his wife in their home quite often. They even went to holidays a few times, so they were really very close friends. And as we know, of course, then James Joyce, after the occupation of Paris in 1940, James Joyce left, and then he died quite soon in Switzerland. And Paul Leon died too, but in a much more tragic way. He was one of the Holocaust victims. He was arrested, and he was Jewish. And even though he, like most Russian Jews from assimilated families, he wasn't really religious. Still, he was arrested by Nazis and sent to Auschwitz and killed there in 1943. So during that time, when they were close friends, Paul Leon was sort of an intermediary between Joyce and the Russian culture and the Russian writers too. Sometimes Russian artists, but mostly Russian writers. And that's how he organized this meeting between Vladimir Nabokov and James Joyce. So they met We know that at least once they met for dinner, even though, as Nabokov wrote about it later in his memoir, it wasn't as successful as Nabokov probably hoped it would be, or maybe his host hoped it to be, because we don't really know why the two writers didn't really become friends. But I think because they were of a different age, they were also both in their own ways. Nabokov was also an accomplished writer, and of course he probably wasn't looking for any protection or any. He just wanted to meet Joyce and talk to him. But anyway, they really met. They talked, and you can read about this meeting in Nabokov's memoir in Speak Memory. And also the widow of Paul Leon left her own memoir where she described these meetings. There were several other meetings. Of course, well, Joyce didn't write any memoir. He never had time to write memoir, so if he never wrote about this meeting, we don't know what he really thought about it. But Nabokov later, when he was preparing his lectures on world literature, he always included a lecture on James Joyce into his course. It was one of the most important lectures, and you can also, if you have interest in this, you can read his lecture. It's now published both in English and in Russian. So to him, Joyce remained one of the most important writers of his time, even though we don't see any influence, any literary, any stylistic influence of Joyce on Nabokov. But of course, Joyce as an artist was very important for Nabokov, and that's why, of course, he always talked about him in his lecture course and mentioned him many times in his various conversations with his fellow teachers, and in his letters. Joyce is very often mentioned. So his name, his art was always very important for Nabokov. And well, I think maybe this is the time when I don't think I have much more time now. So maybe I should now invite our next speaker. And I think, I don't see, our next speaker was supposed to be Filip МакДона, who translated the poem by Nikolai Gumilev, the poem Gondla, or sorry, the play Gondla. Now I'm just looking, excuse me, I'm looking through the list. But I don't see Philip.
Oh, he's not with us, unfortunately. Huh? As I see, he's not with us, unfortunately.
Yes, maybe he'll join us in some time. Hopefully. Well, then maybe we should invite Leonid Kudzeevich to tell us about his historical finds. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you hear me? Are you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, very well. Mm-hmm.
Glad to invite you on this conference. And I would like to speak about history connection of Russia and Ireland. So, on the plenary meeting, Andrei Mashinyan made a short report presentation of the most names of Irish people that take part in the Russian history, and they serve for Russian Empire. And so I would like to speak not about their biographies, because they were in brief presented, and so the main key points it is easily to find in the internet. But I want to speak a little about the presentation of the Russian history through their biography. Few of those people that were mentioned, Peter Lacy, George Brown, Moritz Lacy, and Cornelius Rourke, Joseph Rourke, they were a general high rank people, and so they have quite military and civil careers, and they participated in the most historical events of Russian and also European history of the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century. And so I think it's a very good position to present Russian history for the Irish audience, because I think that it will be more closely for the Irish people to learn to research the Russian history when they see that Irish people participate in it and play sometimes an outstanding role. Of course, the first place we can speak about the role of Peter the Lacy, who have field marshal, and he command of Russian armies in the 1730s and 40s, and also he was the founder of this Irish, maybe called a clan in Russian history, for whom belong all the people that was mentioned, because all of them was closely connected. They helped each other, and also all of them were relatives, because when Lacy take quite a strong position in Russian Empire, when he became a governor of Livonia, he invited Brown, and few years after his service in Russia, Brown became his son-in-law, and also Joseph Rourke was a descendant of Peter Lacy, because his father, Cornelius Rourke, married on the granddaughter of Peter Lacy. And it's also a very interesting point, because it's not only a history, so we can find a history of the Irish, partly Irish family, but family with Irish origin, included in the history of Russian Empire. And I think it is very, of course, very interesting, and maybe very interesting and quite close to Irish people. And the idea to start Russian history in such moments will be more closer to them. And of course, those people in the federal ranks, they also go very close to the court. They through all this period, 18th and beginning of 19th century, they have a connection with the Russian imperial family, with the most campaign for Fortune Empire, and they opened both frontiers from Sweden on north and to Bulgaria and Italy. So it's a part of European and it's a way of connection of the history of Ireland, Central Europe, and in such a way, I think it will be also very interesting to research and to study Russian history in the close connection of Europeans. So I think, in brief, that's the main idea I want to tell you. And if you have questions, I'll try to thank you. Colleagues.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leonid. I think, I don't know if I'm not really the organizer of this conference, but I think Maria, she probably had to leave because she told us that she would have to leave at 8. At 8 because she has another event starting at 8. So thank you very much. I still don't see Filip МакДона with us. I don't think he's with us. No, I don't see him. Well, probably there was some, yes, must have been some other important, some other commitment. Well, thank you. Do we have time for questions? So if you have time for questions, maybe we can encourage our participants to ask questions either in the chat or maybe the organizer will help us to do it. Because I'm not formally and technically, I'm not the organizer. I can't unlock sounds and So very good. So we still have, it seems we still have some time until 8. Yes, until 8:30. Because at 8:30 we're supposed to end with remarks, maybe with ending remarks. So if any of us have, I'm now addressing the participants as if I'm an organizer. So please, I think you can always use our group chat to send your questions. So please send your questions, or yes, I think that's yes, we have this note from Paulina, the chat moderator. So please send your questions in the chat. And since we have since we don't have our one of our speakers, so let me just maybe briefly I'm not going to, of course, I'm not going to tell everything that Philip was going to tell, but I know what the topic of his talk was supposed to be. So let me just tell you the facts that were they probably would be the core of his talk, because Filip МакДона is the former ambassador of Ireland in the Russian Federation. He left Russia about 5 or 6. So, yes, I don't remember exactly. I'm never very good with numbers, but a few years ago. So all of us in this Irish community of St. Petersburg, we all know him very well and met with him many times. He's not only a diplomat, he's also a poet, a well-known poet who published several collections of poetry in English. Of course, he writes in English, and he also translates poetry. And so one of his translations was he translated Nikolai Gumilev's play Gondla, which is rooted in the Irish folk legends, in the Irish folklore. He was also interested in generally in the Russian Silver Age, and this probably was the first. Actually, this was the first translation of Gumilev, of this play by Gumilev into English, and I know that it was this event, this translation was noted by literary critics and by readers in Ireland. So this is another link that now exists between the Irish culture and the culture and the Russian culture and the culture of St. Petersburg. And also in the Silver Age, if we speak about the Silver Age, there were of course other links too, because apart from Gumilev, who got interested in Irish culture during his stay in Great Britain, his stay in London. Of course, at that time, the Irish culture was still very much perceived as part of the English culture, but because Gumilev met W.B. Yeats, who was then living in London. They met personally, and Gumilev read Yeats, and in one of his private letters he compared Yeats to Vyacheslav Ivanov, because Yeats was not only a writer, but Yeats was also an important cultural figure. He was very much known in London. He had many people grouping around him, and he was a big cultural influence there. So in one of his letters, Gumilev writes that on как наш Vyacheslav, he's like our Vyacheslav, meaning of course Vyacheslav Ivanov, great Silver Age cultural influence. And that's when his interest in, that's when Gumilev's interest in the Irish literature, including the Irish folklore, started. And then he wrote his Gondla. And another important, quite meaningful link that, as far as I know, Philip was going to talk about, and which I think most of you know, is the mosaic. Those of you who have been to Anna Akhmatova Museum in St. Petersburg, and I'm sure most of you have been there, you probably noticed a mosaic there at the entrance, at the staircase. There is this big mosaic, which is a copy of a mosaic in Ireland, in a church in Ireland. There is this mosaic which was made by another Russian refugee, another Russian emigre artist, Boris Andrep, who was had been a close friend of Anna Akhmatova, as I think many know, and there are poems by Akhmatova dedicated to Boris Andrep. He emigrated, and they didn't meet for decades until they met much later in 1964, I think, yeah, 64, when Akhmatova went to England to receive her award, the honorary doctorate of the Oxford University. And that's when she met with Boris Andrep after many years. And the mosaic is, of course, it's not a mosaic representing the woman representing the living person. It's a mosaic of Saint Anne. Saint Anne, but the figure of Saint Anne, the face of Saint Anne, resembles the face of Anna Akhmatova. And it's in England, so this was known by scholars for many years, but then about 15 years ago, I think, there was this wonderful idea to make a copy of the mosaic, and again, it was supported by the Irish embassy generously and by Irish businesses, and the mosaic was brought to Petersburg. So that's something that is a reminder of this link between St. Petersburg and Ireland that you can see. So I don't think we have more. We have more time. So maybe I don't know, maybe we can leave some time for questions. Let's see if we have any questions.
Tatjana, I put a note into the chat. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
I put a note in the chat about Brian Friel and his interest in Russia.
Yes, of course. Yes, could you please? Yes, of course. Brian Friel, could you please talk about it?
Well, I'm by no means an expert, but like everybody, every literary person in Western Europe, I'm fascinated by Russian literature, and it's an important part of our development. You have mentioned Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, but we have more affection, I think, for Turgenev and Chekhov. And Brian Friel, who's a playwright that I think most of you will be aware of, developed a very intense relationship with Russian literature, which he explored in a series of plays. And he picked up a number of things that has been mentioned in the discussion already. You know, what is the connection between Russia and Ireland? And he built on what he saw as the similarities. And there are things like the nobility and the peasants living side by side, provincialism, and so on. So perhaps the most famous of Brian Friel's plays, which is Dancing at Lunasa, can be seen as a meditation on Three Sisters. And that's a very good way of entering it. And then there are other things about Russian literature that he picks up and makes visible and audible. One of them is uncertainty, an unwillingness to get to an ending, or leaving the ending open, or approaching the story in different sorts of ways. So he did versions of Chekhov, The Lady with the Little Dog, and again, one of his plays, which I think is one of the most remarkable pieces of theatre. I don't know if anybody in Russia has done it, but I really do recommend you look at it. It's called Faith Healer. My accent has trouble with these words, but it's F-A-I-T-H, Faith Healer. And it was very successful in Dublin and very unsuccessful in London, because how it works is that the characters come on and simply speak to the audience and tell their story. So there's very little attempt to make a drama. It is about storytelling, but as the storytelling emerges through the voices of the three different characters, you realize what the drama is, what is going to unfold, and so on. Always has seemed to me very Russian, actually, a very Russian play indeed. I don't know if I'm speaking to about anything that people have already met, but I think a lot of the other things that we've talked about are really Russia and Ireland being aware of each other from a distance, or trying to find some commonalities in that sort of way. What is interesting about Brian Friel, that there's a substantial attempt to bring Russia into Ireland.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick. And yes, thank you for mentioning him because
I have a question.
Yes, Brian Frew is not very well known,
question.
and I wish he were more known and staged, because I don't think any of his maybe I'm wrong, and some of you know of some of his plays actually staged. I don't really know, at least in Petersburg, of any of his plays staged in theaters, which is a pity, because he's obviously knows Russian literature and is very interested in Russian literature and Russian culture. So yes, yes, there is a play. So yes, yes, one of our participants tells us there is, yes, in the chat that there is a play staged. Well, yes, maybe I'll be able to I haven't seen it. So thank you very much. Yes, I think, Brian, truly, yeah, this is very important as a link between Russian and Irish cultures. Well, since I have
a quick question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
The question is, which is fascinating. Dmitry Shostakovich came to Dublin in 1972 to receive an honorary doctorate from Trinity College, and yet he composed music to The Gadfly. But yet The Gadfly was written by an Irish novelist. Why would he have been inspired by The Gadfly? There is a Russian and Irish link, which I only found out recently because I studied music in my free time and Russian, and I'm playing The Gadfly every night when I practice the violin because my love of Russia. But fascinated by the Gadfly and how Shostakovich was here in Dublin, in Ireland in 1972. So why would?
Yes, this is this is very interesting. Thank you for bringing this up, because this is something that not everyone, not all readers of The Gadfly know. Yes, The Gadfly was written by an Irish-born writer, Ethel Voynich, who was actually her name was Bull, and she was the her maiden name was Bull, and she was the daughter of the Irish mathematician, a famous Irish mathematician, who actually is very well known among mathematicians in Russia. So the name Bull in Russian is still very well known, but very few Russians realize that Ethel Voynich, who is also famous, and I don't remember his first name. It was it John? What was his first name? Her father's John? No. Well, her father Bull. Well, they are father and daughter, because she became famous under her married name. Under her married name, she was married to this Polish man, so her name was Voynich. The reason why, actually, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Shostakovich actually went to Dublin. This is very interesting. I know that her house, the house she was born in, she was born and raised, is still there. It's in Cork, and it's still there. And I know that her fans, they yes, to that place every year, I think, and they listen to this beautiful music, because this is one of the most famous melodies of the 20th century, I think.
I love practicing it.
Excuse me?
I love practicing it every night to start my studies.
Yeah, I'll write to you. I'll send you the link to a person. She's a writer too. She lives in Cork, and I know that she takes part in these traditions, in these rituals. Not really a ritual. It's just go there and.
It was in the Irish Times. I saw the article where he was in Arasanachtharoin beside President De Valera.
Yeah, but that's a different person. Yes, the article is written by a different person.
Shostakovich was standing in Arasanachtharoin in 1972. That's 5 years ago I read the article.
Yes, yeah, I think I remember this article. Yes, so the reason why we can talk about it, because Voynich is one of the, at least she was in the Soviet time, she was one of the most well-known writers of the Soviet Union, not only Russia, but the Soviet Union, the entire Soviet Union, because her novel, especially The Gadfly, other novels were less known. The Gadfly was one of the most widely read. I mean, I don't know any person of my generation or older generations, or maybe slightly younger. It's not so well known now, but in the Soviet time, every child, every teenager read The Gadfly. That's the film. There were three film adaptations, and two of them were still also very popular. One was a film, then the later one was an entire show with several episodes, and both were also terribly popular. So everyone watched them. So she was really one of the most widely read authors, even though very few people realized she was Irish by birth and related to this Irish mathematician. So it's so this is, I think this is why there is this of course this connection with Shostakovich, and thank you for, I forgot. I think I read this article, but I maybe forgot about this particular part of it. Yes,
it's a lovely link between our countries.
Yes, yes, this is really a link. This is a very very
special
important link. Yes, of course.
Очень специально, не думаю.
Excuse me?
Я думаю, это очень специально. Изучал по-русски как дело мосты обоится. Я студентом в языках свободных часов как хобби.
Да, замечательно.
Пожалуйста, да. Очень рад.
Спасибо,
очень
спасибо
рад.
большое. Спасибо, что да, вы приняли участие и упомянули об этом. Да, это очень важно, конечно. Да, очень важно. Угу. Угу. So, yes, any other contributions, please? Any other? Actually, I wasn't preparing to be an organizer, but let me take responsibility. So, yes, any other questions or any other comments or contributions? Mm-hmm. 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 Well, let me then, because I think we're supposed we're supposed to finish in about 3 minutes. So let me then just say a few final remarks. Just thank you very much for taking part in this forum, in this discussion. And actually, this was I'm very happy that some of you took part in it and brought up subjects that I either forgot about or thought I didn't have time to talk about. So now I think we more or less built an image, a picture of the Russian-Irish cultural links, beginning from the 19th century with Maria's talk and into the 21st century through the 20th century, through Nabokov, Joyce, Yeats, Gumilev, Voynich, Shostakovich, and to Brian Friel. So that's a fascinating picture that we have, because this is really this is still there, and I think there is still a lot of mutual interest, and I've felt it myself many times, both in Russia, both in the Nabokov Museum, when we had participants of the Irish conferences coming from various, usually various universities of Ireland, and Irish guests. We had writers, poets that visited us, so there was a lot of interest. And also I feel it in Ireland when I go there, because I've been there many times, and I always feel this welcome, this interest, and I very much feel at home there. And as if I'm at home, and I've never felt any tension between, and never misunderstanding talking to my colleagues and my friends in Ireland. And I think this is the most important thing. And I think that explains why there is why there are these cultural links. Yeah, they really work, because there is so much in common. We have obviously in our mindset, in the way we are brought up, in the way we look at the world, obviously there is very much in common, and I think we have to treasure it and to appreciate it, and to develop this link in the future, and to work towards further interaction between our cultures. So thank you very much, and well, hopefully this is not our last meeting, and hopefully we'll meet again. And you can always well, I'm going to actually I'll now write my email address, so if you have any questions to me personally, or to any of the anyone in this Irish community, cultural community of St. Petersburg, you can write to me, and yes, I'll